The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of OLOS Media or its sponsors.
Welcome to From the Nest with Charity Jen. I'm your host, Jen Newmeyer. On this podcast, we have casual conversations with folks in the nonprofit field, exploring the success and lessons learned of topics like mentorship and campaign tactics. Last fall, I had the chance to chat with Audrey M. Johnson when she was the Vice President of Institutional Advancement for a child advocacy organization and the President of the AFP DC chapter. But in the nonprofit world, things change fast. Audrey is now the Vice President of Philanthropy for College Track and Blazing New Trails. Our conversation is packed with valuable learnings, including her nonprofit journey, commitment to the nonprofit sector, and the crown jewel of our chat, her amazing experience climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And you'll get to hear what happened at the summit. So stay with us. This is From the Nest with Charity Jen. Hi, Audrey. Welcome to the podcast. It is such a delight to have you here joining me on the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be here.
So, just to give our listeners a little bit of background, you and I met recently, actually, just in the past year, serving on the AFP DC board. We're both here in the DC area. And I think just let's kind of dive into a little bit about your history, which is very rich in experience and nonprofit sectors. And tell us a little bit about your journey, sort of to where you are now and your kind of your current roles.
Wow, yes, I have to go back really far. So first I'll start by saying I'm from Canada. So a big chunk of my career happened and started there. You know, when I finished university, I thought I was going to be a lawyer.
Wow.
And had aspirations of, going to law school, but needed to work for a while because I graduated with debt, as many students do, and I was kind of burnt out. So I worked and ended up, in a roundabout way, after starting in communications and doing broadcasting and so on, ended up working for a small nonprofit organization that had a huge footprint in Vancouver. Vancouver Status of Women, I don't mind saying, they're still around.
Yeah.
And I had the privilege of being one of 3 staff people there in this organization, so that meant we all did everything.
Yes.
And fundraising was part of my title. I was the administrative fundraiser, and that was my first professional exposure to fundraising. And I kind of had to fly by the seat of my pants and learn on the job, how to do direct mail, how to do events, how to write grant proposals. And it was in that role I also got introduced to, at the time, I think it was CFRE, or it was a different name than the Association of Fundraising Professionals at the time. But it was a professional organization that was more heavily on the marketing side, but had fundraisers and fundraising components to their professional development. So I got involved with that organization. And after doing that, I went on to a larger national organization that, as an executive director. And of course, we know executive director is, 80% of your job is fundraising.
Yeah.
So, and I've always been very passionate about social justice issues. And, so it was just a continuation of first working for a women's center, then another organization that did legal advocacy work on behalf of women and other marginalized groups in Canada. So, those 2 organizations combined, that was 15 years of my life.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yes. And from there, I needed a change. after a while and went into higher ed. And that's where I really got the nuts and bolts of fundraising, because, universities they're machines when it comes to fundraising, and everybody is so specialized. And so I was fortunate that I ended up in a smaller faculty, and again, sort of, having to do jack of all trades, but you had the support of the central office with you, and I got exposure to so many other really seasoned professionals who just had it down pat.
Yeah.
And I was able to put into practice a lot of what I had learned, in my professional development, and also bring in some of those more innovative elements from working in nonprofit and in social justice. So it was a really great marriage of the two.
Yeah. Did you find when you were sort of changing sectors that it was a little jarring? Was there like an adjustment period for, especially going into higher ed from organizations that, are more sort of direct service?
Yeah, I think what was jarring for me was the bureaucracy that happens in universities. There are layers of approvals, and you can't just come up with an idea and decide to do it.
Yeah.
And everything has to be on brand, and so that took a little bit of adjusting after being so long in organizations where I basically ran the show, or was among the few decision makers. But as I said, it was a really good opportunity for me to hone on, that discipline that you need if you're going to be a specialist, a major gift specialist or planned giving specialist. There's that discipline of cultivating donors, or walking them through the pipeline towards a gift, and then cultivating. So then stewardship. So. Yeah, that part I really, really valued. I think I got a lot of good, solid experience from that.
Yeah. And so you had also mentioned broadcasting, and I think I saw on your bio, and we may have talked about this, but were you with a public media station for a short time?
That's right. When I moved here to the U.S., my first job here was with the local NPR station, WAMU.
Yes.
Did that for 3 years. That was also really fun. That's a different way. It's slightly a different model of fundraising than I had experienced before. With the on-air campaigns and so on. But I was doing major gifts there as well. We were trying to build out our individual giving program and the major gift side. So I got the opportunity to do that in the context of this environment where it's been largely more transactional, in terms of fundraising. So, but that was a really fun experience. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. When you were at WAMU, did they ever pull you in to be on air as part of the on-air fundraisers, or were you protected a little bit from that?
Yes, they certainly tried, and I was on air for one campaign. Not doing pitches; it was more of a promo thing. But yes, they did try.
Yeah,
and I was able to avoid
it. Yeah, in my experience, whoever is available and willing, they'll put them in front of the kid. That's how, I got started in the on-air fundraisers when I was in North Carolina. Just like, come on, Jen, like stand in front of the camera. Here's what you say.
I always admired the people who did it, because you have to have the gift of the gab. And I don't think that's what I have. I'm very much, the person who really values the one-on-one kinds of conversations, and I listen more than I speak. And to be on air, you need to be able to talk all the time and fill that dead space as much as possible. So
Yes. And be prepared for the unexpected. I remember there was one drive that we had where there was some technical difficulties that that something was happening in the control room, and they were not able to go back to the program. And so I had to stand there for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 minutes and just talk. So, yes. Yeah, you really get, I guess once you're exposed to anything, after a period of time, you gain the knowledge and become more comfortable and, and then,
absolutely.
Yeah. And so now let's talk a little bit about sort of where you are now, your role at the AFP. So you are the president of AFP DC, and then you are also a part of the global board, the president's chapter representative. Is that right?
Right. Yes. This year I have the privilege of being the president of the AFP DC board. I've been on the board this is my 4th year. Okay. And it's hard to believe it's gone by so quickly.
Yeah.
Stepped into the chair in January, and in our structure, you're only the chair for 1 year, and then you step off, president-elect, chair, and then past president.
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by a great group of seasoned professionals like yourself, who really care about our members, who are other fundraisers in the region, who are wanting to develop their skills, to network with others and have opportunities for growth. It's been a great experience. Really, really appreciate all the dedication that others have shown as part of the board. And if anyone out there is not a member, I really encourage it, because there's lots of benefits to be had. As I said, the professional development, the education opportunities, and the networking for sure. And that connection to our global body, because AFP is an international organization. We have chapters in Mexico, in Canada, in Egypt even.
Wow.
So you really get the benefit of learning from people all over the world. So as a board member there, I am I'm the chapter president's council representative this year.
And how long have you been involved with the AFP? Just the AFP DC, or were you involved previously with another AFP chapter?
I was a member of the AFP Toronto chapter, but I wasn't active in the leadership there.
I see. Okay. Yeah. As far as, I remember us having a conversation about sort of the benefits of being a part of the AFP. I think that there are so many benefits, the professional development and the education, but I remember us specifically talking about like the networking opportunities. And I was with the AFP in North Carolina, as well as on the board of the AFP in Philadelphia. And one of the things I always loved, that I actually missed during the pandemic, was all of those networking opportunities, because that was, it was just such a way to connect with other fundraisers in a little bit of a different aspect than just going to an education session, because you can kind of talk about some of the experiences you're having and the things that they're doing. Like, it's really just sort of this fluid learning aspect, and then of course being able to kind of grow your network and becoming even more connected with others in, different charities, or doing kinds of, it's really kind of this wonderful idea sharing.
Yeah, I've really valued that. When I moved here from Toronto, I purposefully joined AFP because I wanted to expand my network. I wanted to, build community, get to know other professionals, and I found it really validating to be able to reach out and talk to people about things that they were experiencing in their roles, or to bounce ideas off of, to see what they were doing that we could try in my organizations. That's been hugely helpful. And so I encourage others to take advantage of that opportunity. It's enabled me to learn a lot about organizations and the work they're doing locally as well. And, so if I'm talking to a donor and I know that they're interested in something that we're not able to offer, I can point them in that direction as well. So, it's just helped in so many ways, the networking opportunity.
Yeah. I think having, it's interesting when you're sort of mentioning like being able to give other people connections. Like this just happened a couple of months ago where I think all of the listeners know I work with public media stations across the country, and I got a call from someone who was really struggling because she got pulled into capital campaign discussions, and she's a social media manager. And so it, there was, sort of a lot that she wanted to understand about capital campaigns. And this is a small organization, and I'm not sure what their resources are for approaching this capital campaign, but we have folks on the board who have a wealth of knowledge of capital campaigns. And so it was, I felt really great that I could connect the two of these folks together, so that, she could understand a little bit more about an area of fundraising that is completely new to her. And at the same time, these folks who have all of this knowledge, it's almost like a mentoring kind of, relationship.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned mentoring, because I've been fortunate to have a couple of really great mentors that I've met through AFPDC. Who one of them is a former chair, actually a former board chair, Barbara O'Reilly. I'll just give her a plug.
Yeah.
I really valued just watching other leaders, and seeing how they operate and how they've moved through the world, and listening to the great advice and the benefit of their experience. A lot of that I've been able to cultivate through the relationships that I built in AFP.
Yeah. And this kind of goes back to your first experience in a nonprofit, which I think is very common for a lot of people who are coming into nonprofits, where you start doing one thing and you end up doing 5 more things. And
Absolutely.
You may not have any background on how to create a successful event, or how to monitor and manage a direct mail program, or, even, with major gifts and those kinds of things. So I think that is another element of the AFP that is so beneficial. It's really, like, I can't emphasize those learning opportunities, because they're really crucial for a lot of fundraisers who are coming in and don't know, and don't have the background and the training, and a lot of nonprofits, are because of the type of organizations that, nonprofits always seem to sort of be a little resource constrained. And so it's rare to have documentation for those departments, or what someone did before, So again, like having the resource of other people to be able to learn from is, it's just gold. It's golden.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And fundraising it's not like being a lawyer or a doctor, or, where there's a very specific skill set and, training that you have to go through in order to do those jobs. Because it's a very relational profession. It's about people. It's, and each circumstance is different. Each donor is different. and there are different strategies that you have to deploy in order to secure your gifts or, engage those folks in your organization's work.
Mm-hmm.
There's no hard and fast roadmap to that. We have strategies and best practices that we, organizations like AFP is able to help us develop, but ultimately, it's a very nebulous kind of field. So you're absolutely right, that you kind of have to learn as you go and take advantage of those opportunities to learn those new practices or skills or strategies or ideas, to see how they will work in your organization or for your donor.
Mm-hmm.
It's ongoing, continuous learning.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Seems to there is so much depth, I think, to the fundraising profession, that it is a continual learning process. There are always things to learn and to understand.
Yes.
So yeah. So now I'm curious about sort of your experience on the global board and being involved in that way. I think that, this past year was the first year I had gone to an ICON, an AFP ICON. And for our listeners, ICON is the big global AFP conference that's held every year. And what I was surprised, I probably shouldn't have been surprised about it, but I was, as you had mentioned, there are chapters all over the world. And there were so many people that I was talking to who were from outside of the country. And even having kind of that perspective of sort of like international fundraising or international organizations was really eye-opening for me, and something that I just so enjoyed. So just sort of like pulling along that thread. So with the global board, do you have those same kind of interactions with the other board members? What has been your experience?
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, the global board does have a representative from each of the chapters, the main international chapters. So we have representatives from Canada, from Mexico, from Egypt on the board.
Yeah.
So, we get to hear about the things that they're doing, and they're also looking to us for best practices that they can deploy in their regions. We're the bulk of our membership is still very much North America based, but we are working hard to develop and connect with fundraising and fundraising professionals in other parts of the world. And fundraising in other countries looks different than here, and in some places not as developed as here. But we know it happens. So, we're trying to make those connections and develop resources that we can share and help those professionals in those countries become more rooted with whatever guidance we can offer, and learn from whatever they can share with us as well.
Yeah, that's really exciting. It would be so interesting to take a trip to Egypt and be able to sort of be experience that their sort of network of folks and the organizations that come together. At the AFPDC chapter, we have organizations in all sectors, fundraisers doing all kinds of fundraising work. And I can just, it would be really fascinating to be sort of in a different country, understanding the kind of work that is done there as well.
Yeah. And, even there are lots of our own members who work for international organizations where, the services and programs that they're doing happen in other countries. And in many cases, the funds are still coming from the U.S., and in other cases, they have to fundraise from other countries to deliver the programs, in whatever country those programs are happening. For example, I worked for an international NGO, and the bulk of the funds come from the U.S., but also from countries like the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, etc., who also support the work that takes place in India, throughout Africa. They've been in Central and South America over the years. So I think in those cases, you still need to be aware of the international landscape for fundraising, to understand how it can help or hinder the work that you're trying to achieve, because the rules are different in each of those countries.
Yeah.
Where you're getting the money to where it's being spent, and vice versa. So lots to be aware of. And I think having an international organization that kind of has an eye on all of those things, it's really helpful. One of the other things I really appreciate about AFP Global is that they also are really intentional about helping to develop their chapters. And so another conference that they do is called AFP Lead, where they bring together chapter leaders from around the country and around the world, actually. And, we are able to share strategies. We learn about best practices. We learn about, some of the administrative elements of running a chapter. It was at Lead where I really came to understand that a lot of chapters have many of the same challenges that we do. And we were able to connect to folks who, had similar audiences to us, and we could help strategize around how to problem solve and so on. So really valuable learning and development for chapters as entities, and how to better serve their members locally.
Yeah. And that is usually in the fall. Is it always October?
I think so. It's usually around, before November, because we know that, the November, December season is really busy for fundraisers. So I think we try and be mindful of that.
Yes. And I have been to an AFP Lead before, and can 100% vouch for the value of participating in that conference. It's an excellent one. Yes.
And if anyone has aspirations to being a board member or a committee volunteer, it's a really good entry point to understanding the structure and all the things that go on at that level.
Yeah. Let's shift a little bit, because there's one thing that I really want to dive into, and that is something that I learned, an activity that I learned about that you were doing. It was a few months ago. There was, I think, a committee meeting, and we were sort of getting the committee ready to go, like getting started with the meeting, or and someone said, so Audrey's not going to be able to make it. She's climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And I was like, wait, what? I was like, wait, what is happening here? And so then at ICON, you shared a little bit about your experience, and it was so fascinating. And I would just love to, if you could share with our listeners your experience about the climb and, everything involved. I have so many questions.
So I've had this thing now for many years where every significant birthday, milestone birthdays, I do something to challenge myself out of my comfort zone. So, so I've been skydiving and, parasailing and, all these crazy things. Dragon boat racing was one that I took up one year as well. And this year, this most significant birthday, which was actually delayed because of COVID, was to climb Kilimanjaro. And I'm not much of a camper or someone who likes to spend overnight outdoors. But I did just take on this challenge and trained for a year and a half and did the climb in March of this year. And
Oh
it
my
was an
gosh.
incredible experience. I'm so glad that I did it. Um, you know, I met the group that I went up with was a group of complete strangers that because I just picked a tour company that I found online and did some research to feel comfortable with. And it was 9 of us from all over the world, a
Wow.
couple people from the U.S., Germany, the UK, Australia. So yeah, it was amazing that I ended up with such a great group of people,
Yeah.
and then the support staff, the team that went up with us.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what the training looked like. You said you trained for
Mm-hmm.
over a year.
Yeah.
How do you go about what
Um,
do they give you advice on kinds of things that you are going to expect in like a training regimen that they
yes,
recommend?
they
Okay.
do recommend lots of hiking,
Cool. Yeah.
and cardiovascular work. So they have suggested program that you can follow. But they, yes, definitely recommend lots of cardiovascular work and strength training and hiking, being able to hike, 7 to 10 miles in a day.
Hmm.
So I did that. And actually the best training I did for that was a 4-day trip through the Grand Canyon,
Oh,
that I did a year ago, May,
yeah.
leading up to the climb. And I found that to be the most valuable thing because there you had to train to be able to carry 30 to 40 pounds of weight on you and being able to hike in the heat and then sleep in the cold and all of that. So it was
Oh gosh.
that was the best preparation. I'm so glad that I did that in anticipation of the climb to Kilimanjaro.
Yeah. And how long did it take? How many days, nights?
So there are different routes that you can take up the
Okay.
mountain
Hmm.
that range from 5 to 9 days, and I did the 7-day route. So
Okay.
um, that and the 7-day route was a bit of a compromise. You start at 11,000 feet, so you drive up to 11,000 feet, and then you walk the rest of the way
Hmm.
um, over a 7-day period, and that gives you time to acclimate to the altitude
Yeah.
and get used to the environment and then make it up and come down. So the trip was 5 days up to the summit, and then it took us 2 days to come down.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Now, I am curious about that altitude experience. Because I was talking to a friend of mine who also tried to climb, and went on a climb with her husband, and she didn't make it
Hmm.
because she had a reaction to the altitude. So, can you talk a little bit about that kind of experience? And did anybody else in your group had sort of problems with that?
Hmm. Yeah. So it was everyone in the group made it at least to the crest. One person didn't go all the way to the summit; he made it to the crest, and there's another, like 500 or so feet from the crest to the actual summit. And one person took a very long time. She was 3 or 4 hours behind us, but she
Wow.
finished. She did make it to the summit and come back. Um,
Okay.
yeah, it was a very trying experience. The night that we had to summit, because you summit at night,
Okay.
um, so it makes for a very long day because you hike to your base camp, which is like a 4-hour hike, and then you get to rest for a little while, and then you start out for the summit we started out at like 10 or 11 at night,
Wow.
and then it was a 7-hour hike up until,
Oh.
so we arrived at the summit the next morning.
Oh my gosh. So you're hiking all night?
All night, all
Ooh.
night. And
Oh
I
my
have to tell
gosh.
you, that was the most challenging thing I've ever done
Yeah.
because you're exhausted already, and you are in, pitch dark except for your headlamp, And after a while, my back started to really hurt, and then the altitude sickness kicks in.
Oh,
So
gosh.
you're feeling nauseous, and you have a headache, and you're disoriented, and you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other because we're all single file, and if you stop, then there's a whole bunch of people behind you who can't get around you, so you have to keep going.
Oh gosh.
And at one point, I was so, I was just, it was almost like I was having an out-of-body experience of watching myself walk up this mountain with this file of lights, because that's all you could see was the lights.
Yeah.
And I think at one point my light had gone, the battery was dying or something. But the person's light behind me was lighting my path.
Yeah.
And it made, as I was reflecting on it after, it became a metaphor for, the trials that we go through in life. Sometimes your energy is low, your light feels like it's dim, but there's always someone behind you who can help light your path and give you the courage to keep going, whatever it is you're going through. So that was a really key takeaway for me. I mean, there were so many takeaways from that trip, but that one has really stayed with me. That and the fact that I came off that mountain really feeling like I could just do anything now. Like, I've done that. I can do anything.
Of course. Yes.
It felt like Superwoman.
Yeah.
So, yes, it was a great experience, and I'm really glad that I did it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so then you're climbing all night. You get to the top. And so was the sun rising when you got, were you able to sort of like mentally rebound a little bit to say, oh my gosh, I am literally at the top of this mountain?
I really tried to be present.
Yeah.
There was an incredible sunrise. You just saw the sliver of light right across the horizon, and then the sun and the colors, and it was really beautiful. By then, I was so wrecked. I was so cold. I couldn't take my gloves off because to use my phone, because I would need help to put them on again.
Yeah.
And you couldn't have them off for too long because, there's glaciers up there, and the wind was just ripping off the glaciers onto your face and your hands and everything. And my one regret is we thought to take pictures in front of the sign at the top, and I was like, I'm not taking my glove off again because it would be too much work to get it back on, and it was too cold, and I just wanted to get out of here. So I did not use my own phone to take a picture of all of us at the summit. I had to rely on other people's pictures.
Yeah.
So I do regret that.
Yeah.
But yes, we were up there for about 20 minutes, and then turned around and went back down.
Oh my gosh.
And one funny story, we got up to the crest, and there's a sign at the crest that says you've reached, 18,000 whatever feet, and I saw that sign, and I started running, and I got down on my knees, and I grabbed the pole, and I started to cry. I just burst into tears because I was so happy. I thought I had reached the top.
Yeah.
And then one of the guides came by, and he's like, "Sister, don't cry. The top is just over there."
Oh no!
And he pointed somewhere off into the distance. I'm like, "What? Not the top yet?"
Oh no!
But the top was only another 500 meters or so, which is like, once around a track,
Yeah.
But it took us 45 minutes to get there.
Oh my gosh.
Because that's how slow we had to walk, because the air was so thin and you just could not move any faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh man. So tell me how wonderful it felt when you got back down the mountain, you're maybe back at your hotel room or whatever, you're taking the plane home. Like, at what point on your way, on your return, did you have like the moments of just sort of recounting the entire experience?
Yeah, well, I actually did a smart thing, and I booked a trip to Zanzibar
Oh,
after the climb. So I had 4 days on a beach, and where I got pampered and just enjoyed, this warm weather, and I think it was like the second night that I was there. I had dinner, and there was a terrace, and I was sitting out looking onto the water of the sunset and so on. And I just kind of got really emotional because I was thinking about, oh my God, I did this amazing thing, that I never thought I could do. And it was moments like that where I think of my mother and my sister and the life that, we had, and my younger self, would have never envisioned these accomplishments, so it was a moment I had to take it in. So
yeah.
it happened.
Oh my gosh, that is an incredible story, and I think that there are sort of so many correlations to overcoming adversity and being so proud of the accomplishments that you were able to to do and to reach, and having that network of people to help you along the way. Like I think that there are just so many sort of correlations to your professional and sort of your personal life of really that just align so perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, and yes, you're absolutely right. I feel like my professional life has enabled me to grow personally. And I think a lot of people assume it's usually the other way around, but I've learned so much in my relationships with other colleagues and how I've developed as a leader, and even relationships that I've had with donors, has really enabled me to grow as a person that I then take back to my personal relationships. So it's been really a rewarding career that way.
Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful. I thank you, Audrey, for sharing your story and your professional background and this amazing experience that you had this year. I'm sure our listeners will take away so much from it, and maybe some of them will attempt a climb themselves one day.
Well, I absolutely encourage people to, do whatever it is they need to do once to step outside their comfort zone and challenge themselves, because you'll find that you can do things you never thought you could.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, thank you, Audrey, for joining us. I am wondering, is there a way that our listeners can get in touch with you? Like, are you can they connect with you on LinkedIn, or where can they find you?
Yes, absolutely. They can connect with me on LinkedIn. A.M. Johnson, Audrey M. Johnson is my name on LinkedIn. So you can just do a search and find me, and I'm happy to reach out if anyone needs to connect.
Okay, that sounds good. And again, if anyone would like to join the AFP in any chapter or the AFP DC, Audrey and I are more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Audrey. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Jen. This has been a real pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. There are so many incredible lessons we can glean from Audrey's experience. The rewards of moving outside of your comfort zone to try something new, and how the support of those around you can bolster you through the toughest times. Unfortunately, we had limited time on this episode, but Audrey is doing so much more in the nonprofit space, including advocating for the IDEA efforts within the AFP at the chapter and global level. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you'd like more nonprofit fundraising resources, visit my website at charitygen.com, where you can sign up for my monthly newsletter, access free guides, and learn more about my book, The Insider's Guide to Online Fundraising. This has been From the Nest with Charity Jen, where fundraising takes flight. Thanks for listening.
This episode was produced by Olas Media Network in San Diego, California. Jessica Garcia serves as General Manager. Lena Alvarez is Associate Producer. Elia Ramos is Creative Director. JC Polk is Executive Producer and Founding Partner. And Chad Peace is our President and Founding Partner. Thank you for listening.
Olas Media.